Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and we're back with another innovator interview. And this time we want to talk about the land and our relationship with it. You know, the path to restoring the environment, from reforestation to removing the excess CO2 in the atmosphere, runs straight through our dinner tables. Farm and pasture lands, especially the topsoil that farmers rely on to grow our food, are severely degraded. In fact, the Yale School of Environment reported in February that 1/3 of the U.S. Corn Belt has lost all of its topsoil. Regenerative farming is a technique, it's an emerging practice that can help restore carbon and complex ecosystems in the soil. So how do we as consumers look for foods grown using regenerative techniques and cut down our use of industrially farmed soil-damaging products when we're shopping? We're talking today with Lisa Mabe of the Land to Market program. That's a project of the Savory Institute, which you can find at Savory, that's SAVORY.global. The Savory Institute has developed a program with 100 global hubs where they're practicing their Ecological Outcome Verification. It's called EOV for short, and we'll refer to it that way throughout the conversation. What they do is it allows the consumers to have a connection with the farmers and ranchers who practice regenerative techniques through a badge that is on the product. With the information collected through the EOV certification, consumers can use their spending to reinforce the values of regeneration in our food, leather, and clothing choices. Of course, it's just one of many initiatives we need to continue the reinvention of human life for a sustainable future. But I think this is a really important one. And welcome, Lisa, to the show. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you, Mitch. Lovely to be with you and your audience today.
Well, you guys are doing really important work. And one of the problems that every shopper has is just being able to identify something that is taking the right steps towards sustainability. Can you tell us first about the state of topsoil, which is a pretty grim story? Where are we in terms of the number of harvests that we can expect to have before we lose the soil that we currently have retained?
Well, didn't you just jump in at the scariest part, Mitch? The state of topsoil is not looking too good. In fact, I like to say it personally scares the soil out of me. We have lost roughly about 1/3 of the Earth's topsoil. And I'm really glad we started with this point, as it allows us to talk about soil, not dirt. A lot of people often incorrectly refer to it as dirt instead of soil, but I prefer to talk about healthy soil that's teeming with life, whereas dirt, on the other hand, is certainly not healthy. It's basically dead. Soil, however, is something that we can all relate to. We're all standing on it. We've all touched it. It's our common ground, so to speak. And I think it's an excellent way to help everyone understand the importance of saving the planet, saving our grasslands, regenerating our soil, and supporting brands and farmers who are working to make the planet healthier for us all. So in terms of, how much we've lost, I'll give you a few different stats. For every human alive, around 10 tons of soil erode, either through water or wind. And to grow just 1 ton of food, the average person is only eating about 1 ton of food per year. So we've got about 10 tons of soil disappearing and only getting 1 ton of food out of it, which is certainly not sustainable. And there's been, this is a pretty common stat that you'll hear talked about. It's definitely a rough estimate, is my understanding, but in just about 60 years or 60 harvests, based on our current levels of soil loss, we really don't have much more left than that, perhaps. That's frightening. It's sad, but it doesn't mean it's over. And it definitely doesn't mean we should give up. And the good news is we've got solutions.
Well, and I think that's the important thing. It's not like we're stuck with the soil we have and we have to defend it. We can actually restore the soil. So can you lay out in the broadest terms the principles of regenerative farming so everybody can get a sense of what we're talking about?
Yeah, so just in a broad sense, regeneration or regenerative agriculture is basically helping the land and helping the soil become healthier. So we're either degrading, keeping things kind of status quo, or sustainable, which is better than degrading, but it's still not amazing. Instead of just keeping, Yeah, instead of just keeping things the same, you ultimately want it to become healthier. So for us, regeneration is making grasslands in particular, but the planet as a whole, better, more healthy, and more alive, teeming with life, as I like to say.
How much grassland would we need to restore in order to really make progress, as well as continue to produce meat, dairy, and leather, and things that we generally associate with animal agriculture rather than produce?
So back to that common ground I mentioned before, about a third of the Earth's land masses are grasslands. That's around 5 billion hectares or 12.5 billion acres of grasslands. Those grasslands are disappearing and slowly becoming deserts. That's a huge problem. That's one that we can solve through what we call holistic land management.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit about the idea of animal agriculture. A lot of folks think we just need to abandon meat and dairy and leather and wool, amongst others, because the practices that we currently use to raise those animals are both inhumane and not sustainable. How can animal agriculture be made regenerative?
Right. So land to market is unleashing the innovation that's inherent to ranchers, farmers, and land stewards around the globe. So instead of having a practice-based system, you'll often hear that with other labeling programs, certifications, or verifications. This is a system that instead focuses on outcomes, and that's what the Savory Institute (EOV), Ecological Outcome Verification, that you mentioned, is doing, is measuring for soil health, measuring things like biodiversity, soil health, water. Hold on.
Essentially, it's what you're saying is that the certification is a way of assessing not just whether the food was grown sustainably, but the impact it had on the planet when it was grown. Is that?
Yeah, we look at the whole spectrum of land health, and the EOV program, Ecological Outcome Verification, what that does is it monitors and measures those ecological outcomes, such as soil health, sequestered carbon, water, and biodiversity. And also worth noting too, EOV, I'm happy for folks to know about that, but that really refers mostly to the land itself. That's the sort of monitoring and measurement that happens on land bases. So again, like measuring for soil health, for example. So that's all about the land health. So we like to say from the farm gate forward, like what goes out into the marketplace that consumers like your audience would actually see in a grocery store, or let's say a department store anywhere around the globe. That is the land to market verification. So essentially, once a land base is verified, and this happens annually as well, so that you're always regenerating to be in our system. And if you're not, then you don't get to be in the program until you can prove that you're regenerating again. But anything that comes off of a EOV'd property is then eligible to become land to market verified. And that land to market verification seal is the thing that I'm most focused on in terms of trying to create a foundation of awareness for consumers in markets like here in the United States, as well as all around the world, because you can go into grocery stores, department stores right now, and we have roughly about 1,000 products already just in this short span of time in the last couple of years that are verified products. So for example, if you go into your local Whole Foods market here in the United States and you look for Epic Provisions, that's a meat bar, you'll see the land to market verification seal on that product. You can also find other products like milk. Alexander Family Farms, also sold at Whole Foods Market, that also has the land to market verification seal. It's growing with over 1,000 products now. We are adding members, new brand members every single week. I mean, the demand is actually super strong at the moment. You'll see thousands more products being labeled in our program across the next couple of years for sure.
Well, and we see the same kind of momentum coming out of the pandemic. People have really reconsidered their relationship with the whole world, not just with one another and their social distancing. Now, the verification badge is really what the consumer needs to be looking for. And it says verified in a circular ecological outcome outline. Is that also going to be available in a clothing store, for instance, if you're buying a sweater made with wool that was restored or regeneratively farmed?
Yeah, certainly. So there are brand members of ours like Eileen Fisher, which is a very well-known fashion brand for women that produces a lot of regenerative wool products. So it's a little bit different in the case of fashion and home textiles and home goods, but we do have lots of fashion brands and textile products in our program. They may or may not always be labeled as such, but that's something that we're trying to do more and more of, especially in the fashion industry. And fashion in particular is one that I think we're about to see a tremendous amount of growth from. I don't have favorite categories per se, but there are a few that stand out to me in terms of their willingness to accept change and want to be trendsetters. And certainly the fashion industry, that's right up their alley. So I would say fashion, as well as other categories like viticulture for wine. We just got our first wine member and very first land to market verified wine product from a California producer called Mariah Vineyards and their partner Islands in the Sky, which we're super excited about. And we literally have lots more viticulture and wine brands beating down our door to get into our program, because so many of those brands, whether it's fashion, wine, meat, dairy, etc., they want to do better by the planet, and they're learning and hearing more about regenerative agriculture, but they may not necessarily know what can we do. We're hearing all these consumers and media tell us we need to be better, we need to be more sustainable, or maybe even in our case go beyond sustainability, but they don't know how. And that's where we come in. So we work on the land to market team as kind of consultants to those companies to help them innovate their supply chain. So if a brand like Eileen Fisher comes to us and says, we would like to have better quality wool in our sweaters, we want it to be coming from verified regenerative lands, will you help us? We can connect them through our vast network of hub farms all around the planet to make sure that they're sourcing from the right sort of farmers, ranchers, and land stewards that are verified regenerative.
So let's talk about
that claim.
So let's talk about the role of those 100 hubs that you're putting up around the world. What do they do? How do they interact with the farms? And is that going to provide a consumer an ongoing report about how that brand or product that they buy is improving?
So Savory Institute's network of hubs, they take a regional approach. They're located all over the planet. We don't have them in every single country just yet, but I'm sure that will eventually be the case. But those are each independently owned and independently operated farms, ranches, and they equip farmers, ranchers, pastoralist communities with the tools and knowledge to regenerate grasslands in their localized context. So we're very keen on, teaching farmers. In fact, we've taught, I think, over about 14,000 farmers, ranchers, and land stewards around the planet how to farm holistically, as we say. Mm-hmm. But it's very important that they take in consideration their localized context, their climate, their topography, their seasons. Sure. It has to happen at a local level. But that's essentially how Savory Institute is teaching more farmers around the planet how to adopt regenerative agriculture and to focus on the outcomes rather than just the practices.
So that's interesting. So it's a community approach. A farm or a ranch becomes a hub and then starts to educate the community around them. Do you limit it to 100 hubs, or do you grow past 100 once this starts to get traction?
Oh, it's already getting tons of traction, and certainly not. The more, the merrier. It's going to take all of us together, team humanity, as I like to say, to start to make a dent in climate change. And certainly we are growing leaps and bounds. And part of that growth is spurred from the land to market program there at Savory, because, we're starting to drive a lot of demand for products coming from verified regenerative land bases. So the more that we can drive that demand, the more farmers, ranchers, and land stewards we can get into our program. And ultimately, we want to see regenerative agriculture, and specifically agriculture that is measuring its outcomes, not just thinking, we planted a lot of not just thinking that we planted a lot of crop cover or we've integrated livestock to kind of mimic nature on our property. That's all well and good. But if you're not actually measuring it, you don't know for sure whether or not you're regenerating. So that's super important to do.
Right. So it's as we were talking about at the outset of the conversation, we lose 10 tons of soil for every ton of food value that we get out of it. We want to change that metric and be able to, as consumers, know that that's going forward, that we're making that progress. So what I hear you saying, and this is a kind of a challenging question, is what role does land to market play in reporting back to consumers the overall progress we're making? As you called out at the beginning of the conversation, we're losing 10 tons of soil for every ton of food value that we're getting out of it. Will you be able to tell us in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years that we're back to 1 ton of lost soil for food value, or that we are literally restoring a ton of soil every time we buy?
Yeah, you can certainly look to Savory Institute to, keep everyone up to date on kind of the current state of land health and soil in particular. And this is not a problem that is unsolvable. And really our role as Savory Institute and the Land to Market program is to scale in a really big way regenerative agriculture. And luckily, we're already doing that. This has been in practice for over 50 years, actually, through Alan Savory's work. And we have proof that, we know what we're doing and we can scale it, whether it's a relatively small farm, ranch, or property. I mean, goodness, people can even regenerate their own front or backyards.
Sure.
Anywhere you see bare ground, for example, is not healthy. So even for your listeners here that have a front yard, backyard, or even a big property with some acreage, if you see bare ground, that's not good. It needs to be covered with some sort of vegetation. Anything is probably better than nothing. So, I mean, there's things that we can do on small scales, and we work with farms and brands, large and small. We are agnostic to, a size of a farm or a ranch or a brand. We work with big brands like Timberland and UGG and Applegate and Epic and Eileen Fisher. And we also work with a whole bunch of medium and small brands that perhaps you've never heard of before, like Onda Wellness, which is a CBD oil company, or Lagom Leather, which produces regeneratively sourced, beautiful leather handbags here in the United States. So we're open to everyone, no matter what size or kind of category they come from.
So when will we know we're making progress, in the sense that, for instance, do you have a target date when we stop losing soil net? We go regenerative positive. Do you think that happens in 2030, 2040? When do we turn the corner and start to actually put soil back?
I will have to get back to you on that. I really don't know what the answer to that one is. But I can tell you how long, in terms of restoring the planet's grasslands, it doesn't actually take that long to see a positive impact. So have you ever seen any of the before and after photos or videos? If you go onto Savory Institute's website, we have, as well as our social media, lots of different before and after photos. Yeah, so it's a property that's been perhaps a little bit mismanaged, or it's been degrading for some time. And then we come in and kind of, as land healers, show the farmers, educate them on how to farm holistically so that their property can heal. You can see, in some cases, a really dramatic difference in as little as just 2 or 3 years, and sometimes even less. Just depends on, every single property is different. But it doesn't really take that long to change in a positive way the structure of soil.
Do you see that investment is flowing to regenerative versus industrially oriented farming at this point?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Chris Kirsten and David Rizzo, who co-lead Land to Market, were just speaking out in Oakland, California about a week and a half ago at an impact investment summit that was all focused on regenerative systems. There's a lot of interest, especially out that way, into investing in pro-planet sorts of sourcing and farming around the world. So yes, we're seeing lots of growth in that area.
I've also noticed recently that there's a movement to assist small investors to support and buy into farms. Do you think that that's a program that our listeners should be looking at as a way to add their own financial support to the regenerative movement?
I mean, at this point, for your listeners, I really think the best way to get involved and be a part of the movement to help the planet heal, specifically through regenerative agriculture, is to really look for the land to market verification seal on products. Because again, the more that we can demonstrate to our brand members who have raised their hand and committed to wanting to source or farm in a more regenerative, healthier, pro-planet sort of way, they're going to be incentivized to keep doing more and more of that and converting more and more of their product lines and SKUs into a regenerative system if they see that consumers are actually willing to pay for that.
Now, I see that you can join Land to Market as a consumer. What do you get out of sharing that personal information to get a newsletter from you all?
So Land to Market's membership is actually limited to brand members, farms, and ranches for the Land to Market side of things. But Savory Institute as a whole does offer a membership for, just regular folks to join in and to learn more about regenerative agriculture. And that's more of a donation to the Savory Institute nonprofit so that we can keep teaching more farmers, ranchers, and land stewards around the planet about holistic management and regenerative agriculture.
Okay, great. Well, we will obviously include a link to that in the story that goes with this podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us, Lisa.
My pleasure. And I certainly encourage your listeners to go to landtomarket.com. That'll at the moment redirect to Savory's website and our landing page there. But you can see a big list of logos there that include a lot of our members, brands large and small from all across the planet, and get more familiar with our Land to Market verification seal and start to look for that in stores.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We've been talking with Lisa Mabe of the Savory Institute's Land to Market program. Do check out savory.global or landtomarket.com. Both of them will get you the same place. And learn about the mark, because that EVO Ecological Outcome Verification badge is something that can really help you find products that are raised and produced in a more responsible way. Folks, this is Earth911, Sustainability in Your Ear. And of course, we are going to be back until this problem is solved with more innovator interviews. But we encourage you all to share this podcast and other podcasts in our series, as well as other podcasts you value, with your friends, to get them thinking about environmental impacts and how they can change their relationship with the planet. We'll be back soon. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Sustainability in Your Ear. And folks, please remember to take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let us all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.